Thank you, thank you. Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. You hear me? Yes. Fantastic. Well, thank you to Computer World and Barry for having me here today. It's a great pleasure to be here. It's also a great pleasure to notice, looking at the clock, that I was supposed to be on at 3 o'clock, which actually means that so far everyone's done a great job of not only running to time, but running ahead of time. So you'd be pleased to know that my objective is to add to that value add, because I may be showing my alcoholic tendencies, but the sooner I get to a beer, the better, and I'll try and do the same for all of you. The title of my presentation, Digital Transformation, brackets for real, exclamation mark. Before I get into that, however, just a quick introduction to myself. I'm a geek. I am a reformed techie. Unbelievably, or believably, that is me at the age of 18. I was one of the first few people that was privileged to actually go to university to study computer science and software engineering. It had just kind of started as a discipline. So for any of you techies out there, firstly, don't be ashamed. Secondly, if you want to have a competition about how much assembler code you can get into 1K of memory with re-entrant capabilities, happy to have those. He's techie, is he? You're pointing at him. I'll have you later, mate. After several years at college writing code, and it says here, by the way, my success criteria was a haircut. It was not that, but it isn't things I could put on a slide in a public audience. After several years at that, then these nice people came in the last year wearing suits, a bit like what I'm wearing now, from various IT vendors saying, you need to come and get a job with me, you need to come and get a job with me. And those were the great days where the relatively few IT graduates were in great demand. So I chose to go and work for IBM. And the reason was nothing to do with careers and all the rest of it, or even pay, because the pay was crap everywhere. The reason I chose to go and work for IBM, I think it was $7,500 a year, which seems unbelievable now. The reason I chose to go and work for IBM was, whereas the other company, I think it was ICL at the time, were offering a Cavalier L, IBM were offering a Cavalier LS. And that made all of the difference. Today it's about whether you have this iPad or that iPad. Then it was about the kind of Vauxhall Cavalier you had. And this is the full horror of what a company like IBM can do to a young, spirited individual. Let me just fast forward in the interest of time, 30 years, right? 30 years. How does this work? Click. 30 years. My criteria now, survival. And I look around the room here and I see a few more of you that, like me, have topped 50. We're no longer allowed to ask people to put up their hands or stand up on the grounds of ageism. But I would just like to offer, for those of you who've also topped 50, a quick round of applause. My fellow survivors. And for all the rest of you who aren't 50, you've got no bloody chance, right? I mean, the pace of change is such, I feel really, really sorry for you. So that's a quick introduction to myself. Digital transformation for real. There's a lot of, again, having been in the industry a while, I've seen various hype curves come and go. There's a lot of hype around this subject of digital transformation. How many of you have seen or heard a presentation from somebody somewhere on the subject of digital transformation? Yeah. Most of you. Okay. You probably heard about digital cows, digital tractors that don't need drivers. Yes, the world's biggest taxi company, Uber, doesn't have any cars. The world's biggest hotel chain, Airbnb, doesn't have any hotels, etc., etc. Right? But what does all of that actually really mean for us? Now, if you go and Google digital transformation, the first thing you get is basically all of the logos of the top 100 IT companies on the planet, all proposing that they can do digital transformation better than each other. And the second thing you get is a few definitions. And I particularly liked this one. I may read it for those of you at the back that can't read it. Digital transformation is a profound transformational in business, organizational activities, process competencies, and models to fully leverages the changes and the opportunities of a mix of digital technologies and their accelerating impact upon society in a strategic and prioritized way with present future shifts in mind. What a load of old twaddle. So again, my over 50 years old, slightly cynical brain says, what that really means is using IT to do good stuff, which I would argue we've all actually been doing for quite some significant time. So it's the kind of the next phase on that journey. So what are we really trying to do? Well, actually, some of you here are in the commercial sector, some of you here in the public sector. So I'll kind of bifurcate you on those grounds. Ultimately, half of us in here in the commercial sector are doing all of this or this, however way you choose to define it, with the objective of doing better business. Driving more sales, driving up revenue, driving down costs, therefore gross margins, customer retention, customer loyalty, etc., etc. And for those of us in the public sector, ultimately what we're here for isn't this per se, but to do this in the spirit and with the ultimate goal of providing better public services, be it hospitals, be it education, be it government, etc. You all with me so far? Is that fair and reasonable? Yes, reasonable. Hurry up. So, what I'm going to do in the next 3 hours is show how, by pulling together 7 companies into Dell Technologies and acquiring those companies and taking them private, Michael Dell and Dell Technologies is well positioned to help you with better business and better services. Now, the great news is, however, going back to my comment about 3 hours, is that actually having sat and listened to most of what has been said so far today, you've actually had sessions on IT and infrastructure modernization. You've had sessions on IT security and security transformation, and you've had sessions on workplace transformation. So actually, all of what I was going to talk about under the banner of Dell Technologies has already been covered. So I'll thank you for your time. And so all is left for me to do is to show, therefore, how Dell Technologies, with our companies, our assets in those companies, our people, the skills, the experience, and very importantly, our partners, actually pull together the various threads of the number of topics that you've spoken about today. And I reckon I can do that in around about 4.5 minutes, if anybody wants to risk timing me. Moreover, I normally do this as a whiteboard, hence why you see this as black on white. Okay? If you want whizzy graphics, that's not me. It's my Luddite tendencies coming out. It's also very good when you print it. Saves a whole lot of money on color ink cartridges. So, we start closest to the business and the services we're trying to provide ultimately is the applications. Infrastructure, somebody made a comment earlier, infrastructure is boring. Personally, as a techie, I think it's great. But anyway, infrastructure per se doesn't drive better business or better service outcomes. Yeah? If we can do fancy stuff and send each other pretty pictures and smileys across Skype, doesn't do a great deal for the business. What actually does stuff for our business is the applications, the core applications that drive the business. Now, applications we see these days bifurcate fundamentally into 2 halves. There are the classic applications that we've had for years, our systems of record, our big databases, our HR systems, our CRM systems, our SAP systems. And on the other hand, in recent years, a kind of new raft of applications that have been developed since the emergence of the internet and the cloud, when we're born on the web and actually written as cloud-native applications. And in each of these cases, we require a different type of infrastructure. And we've been building infrastructures over here for years and years and years. And really, if you net it all out, there are really 3 components in the data center that matter: compute, storage, networking. And from a Dell perspective, we are now the global leader in x86 servers. We will be, by the end of this year, or else I lose my job, the leader in x86 servers in the UK and in Ireland. Our trajectory is like that, and our friends the other side of the car park in Bracknell is going like that. And when the 2 lines cross over, I'm getting this massive banner done. We're number 1, you're not. I've already got it in the marketing budget, and I've invited the register, so we better do it. Prior to Dell and EMC coming together, no great surprise, EMC was number 1 in the UK in storage. In the commercial sector, Dell was number 2. So putting number 1 and number 2 together is a pretty good place to be. The only kind of networking I'm interested in is open networking. We're the fastest growing open networking company. Okay? And for those of you that don't know the difference between open networking and non-open networking, I'm not going to go into it now. Invite you to have a conversation with us or with our friends at Computer World, and we can take you through all of that. But what it doesn't include is 5-letter vendors beginning with C. Oh, can't believe I just said that. Right, moving swiftly on. What we've been doing in more recent years is by bringing in another family member who you heard from earlier today, VMware. We've been able to take this kind of build-it-yourself component model into here is a block, an integrated appliance, a converged appliance that essentially includes the components that you need to get the job done, which accelerates time to value and lowers TCO. Moving into the born-on-the-web cloud-native world, essentially we've taken this concept of convergence, and we've taken it down a layer to hyper-convergence. And again, you'll be familiar with things like VxRail. We have a partnership with Nutanix. We do a lot of work with Microsoft. A variety of hyper-converged platforms. I did this presentation about a couple of weeks ago, and someone came to me afterwards and said, so you went from converged to hyper-converged. So what happened to super-converged and mega-converged? That's a good point, isn't it, really? Anyway, moving swiftly on. For the customers, however, so this is great. So you can build out, in a 2U, two-socket kind of node at a time, scale out as your application and business landscape requires. We also have some customers who need this, but they need it essentially on steroids, where we actually roll in whole racks at a time. So my biggest customer in the UK and Ireland is a small software company called Microsoft, who have a little cloudy thing called Azure. When they buy servers, it's kind of by the truckload. And we have a contract with them which is called Arrive to Live in 5. It literally means we have to turn up on site with all the kit loaded, plugged in the racks, and within 5 hours we have to roll the kit out of the trucks into the data center, plug in the power, plug in the network, and it has to be in Azure delivering revenue for Microsoft. And that's on the thousands and thousands of server scale. So again, though, however, the main components here, in addition to Microsoft, Nutanix, and other partners, again, Dell EMC and VMware are core components to that technology. So from a Dell EMC and a Dell Technologies perspective, we're in a great place here to help our customers, as you heard earlier, with the infrastructure transformation, because actually we've got technology here, and leadership in both, and able to help people move applications where it's applicable from one side to the other. Now, this is only half of the kind of world, because increasingly we're all looking to move our workloads off-premise to some kind of cloud infrastructure. If you have an application that was built from the get-go to run in a cloud environment, subject to a whole raft of issues in terms of compliance and where the data is and where the application runs, technically at least, to take an application from here that's heavily virtualized, etc., and run it up here in your choice of cloud is technically not that hard to do. Up here, the infrastructure or the individual components of that infrastructure are designed to fail. And what I mean by that is, there is no hard SLA, at least at a component level, on the infrastructure in a cloud. We saw recently a big chunk of AWS's service in the East Coast of the US go down, and it took out about 600 businesses for the best part of a day and a half. This is not designed to be in itself inherently fault tolerant. So what does that mean? It means the application has to be written knowing that the infrastructure isn't fault tolerant and have that resilience built in at the application layer. If you go back to the old world, we wrote applications on the assumption that we built all of that resilience into our infrastructure. We have SANs with synchronous replication and failing over between multiple data centers. We have 2 switches of everything, 2 servers of everything. not, however many nines is built into the infrastructure, so the application can assume that the infrastructure is always there, is always on. So if you take SAP or any other application, that classic app up here, and stick it up here and assume that you've got all of those nines of availability, then potentially you're in for a headache. So what do we need up here? What we need for the off-premise equivalent in this world is we need an enterprise-grade cloud, a cloud that has got those 24/7, 365 stringent SLAs, can give quality of service, can give low latency, etc. So to address this need, again within the Dell Technologies family, we've created an organization, Virtustream, which actually provides that enterprise-grade cloud. So just to give you as an indication, SAP themselves actually run a whole bunch of their services on our Virtustream Enterprise Cloud. And by then finding a home for how you can take some of these mission-critical applications and put them into a cloud, that then also allows you to think about which data sets and which applications can then sensibly be run on the pure public cloud over here. So, all very well and good. Where do we get the applications from in the first place? We've had these for years. Where do these ones come from? Well, in the main, well, we can't buy them off the shelf or as a service. And if we want them to be innovative and differential, we have to write them. The challenge is most of our organizations kind of only know how to write applications in this world. This is a very, very different world. Up here, we have the whole concept of DevOps. We have the concept that users expect new functionality in the same way as kids expect a new update to Angry Birds, on a monthly or sometimes weekly or even daily basis. The old, don't worry, you're on version 1.7, version 1.8 will be along in 2 years, doesn't cut the mustard anymore. So we have to have rapid development, new functionality, propagated into runtime. Runtime generates data. We use the data to refine the application, so forth and so on. And new ways of doing things with microservices and containers, etc. So to help our customers make that transition, we've built something called Pivotal Labs. Now, Pivotal Labs, as the name would suggest, is a physical lab environment. We've got these in major cities around the world. There's a Pivotal Labs set up in Old Street in London. And in Pivotal Labs, we have a bunch of guys who know how to do all of this stuff, do it day in and day out, average age around about 19, he said, being ageist again, who get all of this stuff. And what we then do is we allow our customers to come in with their developers, perhaps who are not so familiar with that environment. If they want to, bring their ideas, bring their applications, perhaps even bring some data where that's applicable, and actually co-develop their ideas for this new world, sitting together with our guys from Pivotal Labs for days, weeks, in some cases months. And in that environment, we use underlying technology, Pivotal Cloud Foundry, which is an OpenStack environment, which is optimized for this type of high-velocity development and execution. Right. So, moving swiftly on, this is all very well and good and dandy. It's only as good as our ability to actually use it as human beings, or indeed not human beings, as you'll see in a minute. So, you've been talking earlier about workforce or workplace transformation. Prior to Dell and EMC coming together, I used to spend a lot of time being the data center guy trying to convince people that we were actually a market leader in servers. People would say, but you're a PC company. I then used to say, well, we make a third of the PCs in the UK. We make a third of the servers in the UK. We make a quarter of the PCs in the UK. So how the hell does that make us a PC company? Anyway, I still used to have this kind of pushback that we were a PC company. Actually, now with Dell and EMC all coming together, we don't face that. And one area where we definitely don't face any pushback is we are an exceptionally good and exceptionally strong end-user device company. Moreover, going back to one of the previous presentations about thin clients, a while ago we recognized that that was going to be a significant opportunity, so we acquired Wise. We equally recognize and understand that there are a whole plethora of devices out there, from iPhones, iPads, Android devices, et cetera, et cetera. So, we've built a raft of capability to help our customers transform the end user landscape. Now, all of this is good, but it isn't the thing, as you heard from one of the previous presentations, that probably keeps our CIOs awake at night. What keeps our CIOs awake at night is we don't want to be the next hospital that's got WannaCry stickers all over our PCs on the news at 10. I have a personal story about that, by the way. As I said, I've worked for Dell for 10 years. My mum, who lives in Gloucester, not that far from here, my mum is a retired nurse. She still thinks computers are magic and it's all kind of skullduggery and underhand and shouldn't happen. So she was watching the news at 10 and she saw the WannaCry stuff in hospitals with the piece of paper stuck on the screen saying, "Do not turn on this PC." Right? Unfortunately for me, like most of the PCs in the NHS, it was a Dell one. It had a Dell logo underneath it. My mum rang me up, and I won't try and do the accent to this audience because I may offend. "Your computers, I've been telling you for years, they're going to bring this country to its knees. All the operations are cancelled, and it's your fault, Sonny." True story. As you heard earlier, a lot of the issues, WannaCry being an example, they're coming through the endpoint. So we have Dell Data Protection, a suite of products we have that secure a wide variety of endpoints. For those of you in the IT security world, RSA is a household name in IT security. Not many people realize that RSA, with its user access and identity management and all sorts of other capabilities, is actually part of Dell Technologies family. I'm going incredibly quick now because I said I was going to run ahead, and I know you've heard about lots of this stuff before. You've heard about NSX with microsegmentation and what that can actually bring and add to a security environment. And for those customers of ours that either don't want to, who can't actually manage their own security, we have Dell SecureWorks, which effectively is a SOC as a service. So for the organizations that just simply want to go, this whole IT security thing is kind of like too hard, too scary, we can actually provide managed security on an SLA basis. And to add some sort of credence to that, 30 of the world's top 100 banks have actually outsourced their IT security to Dell SecureWorks. So, putting this all together, there's an awful lot of breadth of capability that we've pulled together as Dell Technologies. Notwithstanding that, when you've got a lot of breadth, sometimes people assume there therefore isn't depth. And what I can absolutely assure you is if you go and look at any of these assets here, and I've talked about many of them, albeit at an incredibly high level, and I know you've heard some more about them in depth today, if you actually push hard any point on here, you will not find us lacking. But I think the breadth in itself is important, and I'll tell you why I think it's important. When I look at this as a computer scientist, I see a whole heap of those horrible things called interdependencies. If you think about an IT project or program, two things that generally cause it to fail: scope creep, or something we thought was there wasn't there. So something else we thought somebody else was doing that was going to be there didn't quite materialize. Interdependencies. If you think about it here, if someone's got an issue with their VDI environment, you can go and whack the device several times. It won't make a lot of odds. The chances are you've got either a networking issue or you're short of IOPS in your storage. Right? Those are classically issues you see with what feels like an end-user computing project. There's no point in writing fantastic new applications if you haven't got the right kind of infrastructure to run them on. I personally was responsible for a desktop transformation program for one of the world's largest banks 5 years ago. We got 225,000 devices off XP, which, by the way, I mentioned to my mum when she rang me up about the hospital incident that it wasn't my fault, it was to do with XP, but she didn't quite get that bit. And when we migrated that bank's 225,000 devices off XP, the pain wasn't running around switching out desktop units. The pain was mitigating the 55,000 applications that all had interdependencies written in to the XP landscape and trying to keep the bank's security people happy whilst doing it all. So all of these things, in my view, are heavily, heavily interlinked. So my point here is simple, is if you want to engage with somebody to do something in any of here, and hey, we would love for you to turn around and say, hey, you know, Dell Technologies, Computer World, take the whole thing, just do it all for us. That isn't realistic. But when you're looking at companies to consider for elements of this, it's kind of wise or sensible to look at what else that company can do. So even if we are tasked and scoped to do a particular project for yourselves, you're operating with somebody that has a holistic or a broad understanding of the big picture. So I'm going to leave it there. If anybody is sad enough to want a copy of all of that scribbling, we've got some of these cunningly made up ones sitting over on top of a beautiful server on the Dell stand over in the expo area out there. In actual fact, I looked how much kit was out there, and it looks like half a bloody data center, so we'll have to bring less next time. And for those of you that kind of want to get into any more detail above and beyond that, we've also got on there something for your bedroom walls, which is something I put together because, again, I'm a geek and I'm sad, which is our blueprints guide. And these are anonymized, real customer examples of projects that we've done, again, together with our partners across VDI, hybrid cloud, software-defined data center, high-performance computing, big data, business applications, and SAP HANA and analytics. Again, they're not meant to be this is how you do it. They're just examples. Behind each of these work streams, you know, I have a team of specialists that can help in any one of each of these domains. And by the way, I've learned from bitter experience, getting this out in a forum like this is easy. Trying to get it back to get together again is a lot harder. Thank you very much for your time.